Sometimes don't you just need a quick moment of inspiration? Or maybe you just need a moment of caffeinated contemplation to reflect on life? That's the idea behind my weekly Coffee with Nicoa espresso shots. I'll be sharing short jolts of inspiration in each clip in addition to my longer Coffee with Nicoa interview episodes. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an espresso shot or a full-length Coffee with Nicoa interview created just for you. Hey everybody, this is Nicoa, your espresso shot for the week. I am recording this right after an interview that I will likely post following this espresso shot. So I just did an amazing interview with Hannah Deindorfer, who is known as the Libido Fairy. So make sure that you're paying attention because I'll try to post this on a Monday and I'll post her interview on the next Wednesday following. She is an amazing young woman. And we talked about sex. Yeah, the Libido Fairy. I guess you kind of got a feel there, plus the title. So we talked about sex. And when I think about sex, I think about intimacy and I think about connection and I think about relationships. But I also want to think about all of that in the context of consciousness and where the world is going today. I have an opinion, and I think the opinion is we've got to start being truthfully, authentically, unapologetic about what we talk about and what we want in our lives, and make choices that align with what you want, what you crave. And I'm not just talking about in the bedroom. I'm talking about in every aspect of your life. And one of the biggest takeaways we had in that conversation was that your sex life, your relationship with yourself personally, sexually, is really your root chakra. It is your foundation of who you are. And if you haven't come to terms with that part of you, if you're not in relationship with your own sexuality and you're not expressing that sexuality on a regular basis, either by yourself or with others or in your creative outlets, then you're not living a full life. You're not living a full life. And one of the things that Hannah talked about was that when she works with her clients, if they don't address that part of their wholeness, then they don't get the things in life that they crave. And you guys know I'm all about life by design, right? Let's talk about love by design, lust by design. How intentional are we in really exploring these parts of ourselves in order to raise our vibration to attract our deepest heart's desires? So she really left me thinking. And my opinion is we have to prioritize ourselves in those areas of our life, or we're actually putting roadblocks in front of us on our journey. We argue for our limitation. Well, my partner doesn't, blah, blah, blah. Or, well, I don't have any time to be taking care of myself. Or I need some privacy. There's kids everywhere. Whatever the excuse is, it doesn't have to be a literal sexual act. Like you don't have to go and masturbate for an hour in the afternoon in order to create this relationship with yourself. The invitation here is to begin to have the conversation with yourself. The conversation with yourself about your sexuality. Start with the word sex. What is your reaction to that? What was your reaction when you saw the title of this post? What is your reaction with me saying the words masturbation, sexuality? We can name all the body parts if you want, right? I remember a sweet story. The sweet story makes me also invite you to ask yourself, how am I having these conversations with my children? How am I having these conversations with my partner? Do I only have these conversations with my girlfriends or my buddies? What did those conversations look like? And I think back, my mother, bless her heart, because we're Southern, she did a great job of teaching us about sexuality when we were young. The books, pictures and the egg and the sperm and we learned all the birds and the bees. And then around, the beginning of high school, she checked out. And I remember talking to her about that recently. And I said, I was like, yeah, you did great. And then you stopped. And that had an influence on me. I can remember at one point my mother realizing that there had been some missing conversations about sex in our house. And she sat down next to me and said, I was probably about 17 or I was probably 17. And she said, do you think, is it time? Are you ready to be on birth control? And I was like, oh yeah, that's probably a really good idea. Because we'd never talked about that. Now, one of the beautiful things that I'm really, really, really proud of is that I broke that cycle with my kids. My kids have been talking about sex and all sorts of things since they were probably about 8 years old. And because that's when they start exploring their bodies really, like really asking the questions. And I highly recommend the American Girl series books. There's a bunch of great books. I'm sure there's a bunch more now. This was in the 90s when my kids were being born, in the early 2000s. So those were really great go-to books for helping have conversations about sex. But I have extended those conversations into their young adulthood. And I'm sure they're all covering their face right now, but I don't care. I want them talking about it with their kids. I want them to know their mom is unapologetically going to talk about natural, normal, beautiful things like sex. And I also recommended to my kids omgyes.com. And there's some movie star recommended it once, and I was like, what is that? And it talks to you about how to masturbate and ways in which you can pleasure yourself. So I think it's a really important conversation because this is your life experience and your children's life experience. And they're supposed to grow up and have the best experience they can. And sexuality is a big, big piece of life. And if we aren't talking about it, then we're not doing our job as parents to enable them to live their fullest lives. So let's talk about sex, baby. And I want you guys to really begin that conversation first and foremost with yourself. And I can see a future lust by design, love by design topic that I want to write about. And maybe that's the next journal. All about sex, baby. Thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an espresso shot or a full-length Coffee with Nicoa interview created just for you.